Netflix tries to separate Vince McMahon from WWE faster than Vince separates hush money from his checkbook. Tony Khan's live promos sound like he's auditioning for the Muppets. And AEW generously offers the press obstructed views at Grand Slam. If only there were 12,000 better seats to choose from. Today's show is rated TV 14.
The Wrestling Hour starts now. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Wrestling Hour right here on the MyFandom YouTube channel. Of course, the MyFandom Podcast Network. Your host, of course, Dave Sturcio, alongside his I'm trying to find the words to describe our relationship at this point of our careers. But I want to say the best manager on the independent scene.
Oh, wow.
The best color commentator on the independent scene.
Oh my gosh.
Mr. Josh Chernoff. Josh, how you doing, buddy?
Wow, I'm blushing right now. Thank you. Thank you.
You are a
much.
maroon.
Yeah, my entire shirt is blushing. No, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm doing well. We had a busy week last week. Between Fight Factory Wrestling, where, I think everybody involved killed it there. We then jumped on over to AEW on Wednesday, Arthur Ashe Stadium. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then, we just did another WrestlePro event, which was, I think, highly successful as far as commentary goes. We are the best in the business. We're untouchable.
Yeah.
In the fact that no one will touch us. It's I've seen some really cool things online. They recently just posted the show on social media, and I saw some very flattering things about us as commentating duo. Yeah, and some people enjoyed my I believe the term was tantrum.
I wonder if he spliced it the way Mike said he was going to splice it of GPW.
No, and I love Mike and I love GPW. This was not edited at all. To the point where it begins with your pre-show match is scheduled for one fall, and then goes to let's introduce the commentators, to which I come out there, and then you hear testing, 1, 2, okay. Which is good because normally I throw in like a testes 1, 2, 3. And so I'm glad that didn't make it, but
and
not
then,
edited.
Josh, and then you're forgetting the best part. Shining Wizards Kevin can't get my music to play, so I come out to no music. In which was for me a swan song of sorts. I called it poetic. I said, this is really funny that the end of Heartache will not play as my heartache ends.
Well, that's it. The end of Heartache is just a flat line. And, so that was fun. Apparently what happened though was, so it wasn't the normal, sound guy but it was the normal sound guy's files. And apparently he had, yours and mine under my name, and that's what happened.
You know what that's also called? That's also called sucking at your job,
yeah.
Will. So yeah, that's on you, Will.
Yeah.
All right, Will, sound guy, Will.
But yeah, so it's all on there, warts and all. So go check it out. But it was a fun show. That. Look, nobody is tuning in for our critique on WrestlePro. So we can critique AEW instead. But we also wanted to talk about, obviously, the Mr. McMahon documentary. I found, to jump right into that, the Mr. McMahon documentary, I've seen a lot of different things online about it, right? Like there's people who felt it was like they were disappointed because it wasn't new information. They were, you have to understand, it starts off by saying Vince canceled his last interview because of all the, stuff that came out. By the last episode, they really, man, okay, so there's one really powerful part in there where they catch up with, they show everyone, I think it was like 2022, and then they bring back Meltzer and bring back Bruce Pritchard after um, the initial time Vince left and then came back, right? So it's kind of like Vince will never leave. He'll never retire. He'll never retire. That's all the interviews. And then it's like Vince McMahon retires. And then it's like, then they're like asking Meltzer, like, do you think he'll be back? He's like, it's wrestling. He's like, he'll be back. And then he comes back, right? Vince comes back. So then they interviewed Bruce Pritchard and they asked, like, you've seen a couple of these episodes. What did you think of it? And Bruce was very honest. He's like, I thought they sucked. I thought they were made to like a hit piece on Vince. And what I liked about it was they took that opportunity to actually allow Bruce Pritchard's feelings to be shared in the documentary, where Bruce says, like, you didn't show Vince McMahon the person. You didn't show the man who made sure that when my wife was given 4 years tops with cancer, and he made sure she had the absolute best care, and that was 24 years ago, and she's still here, and all that stuff. And so he kept talking about Vince McMahon, the human being, and the thing. There was no talk about all the good that he had done, and so I thought that was really cool that they added that in. But then it pops up 2 days later, and then it's all the Janelle Grant news. And I think that was my takeaway from this whole thing was Vince said some. I mean, look, he talked a little bit about his abuse as a child, his relationship with his father. His father he only told him once he was proud of him, and only told him he loved him the day before he died. Like, just weird, weird. So I wish they would have gone a little deeper into that, into like trying to understand Vince McMahon. But I think, Eric Bischoff said it best on a podcast that they were doing. He said that he felt they didn't do that because that would make Vince the sympathetic babyface, and they didn't want it to be that, right? Like you shouldn't end this cheering for Vince.
Right. And I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that I think that this is the WWE's way of saying, hey, we're about to drop on Netflix. And oh, by the way, this guy, yeah, he created it, but he has nothing to do with this now. So don't hold that against us right now. And I'm just like, dude, come on. You know what I mean? Like again, what the accusations are horrible, right? They just get as bad as you can possibly get. And that actually started with a lot of his stuff that he was portraying or doing early in his career, whether it be the steroid trial, whatever, everybody was on him. Your boy Bret Hart, outside of the Owen Hart part of this documentary, I felt that Bret, this was his chance to like one final punch in the face, and pun intended.
Yeah, but you know what? I thought Bret was, everyone gives him a hard time about being like bitter and all this stuff, and certainly has his moments for sure. But I felt like, yeah, he was definitely reveling in retelling the story of how he punched him.
He came out of there as soon as I looked over, I said, wait a minute. I was like, The Rock is the only one that usually calls himself The Rock, right? In the third person. But like when he was talking about the Superstar Federation era, right? He's like, well, they had a guy, his name was Bret Hart. And that was him saying it. I was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You're like,
you know what? I think for Bret, I think he looked at this, giving his honest opinion on Vince. It's been tough for him. He did see Vince as a father figure. Then he got screwed over, and he had all these personal and professional issues. And then there's still at the end, when they come back together. And he did mention, with the Owen thing, when he finally got that phone call from the
report,
police, from the police saying this was an accident. He said that at that point he forgave Vince. And I wonder, because we've always heard that him and Martha have completely grown apart, that there's like no interaction really, is what we've heard. Who knows? But I wonder if that was the moment, right? When Brett let go of the animosity towards Vince for what happened to Owen, and Martha didn't. And not saying she should have, right? That's not that's not for me to say, but maybe that was where he was kind of like, okay, I'm willing to forgive because he didn't mean to. And listen, Vince did not come off well in this.
No.
Talking about the Owen thing did not come off well at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, specifically with if it was me, I would have kept the show going. I was just like, and then, dude, I think the worst line he could have dropped in this, the Owen Hart situation, was when he said, well, it was dark and not a lot of people saw it.
Right.
Like, but meanwhile, his blood is literally stained on the mat. And I'm like,
no.
Oh.
And that is something we're going to talk about. And I'm going to
Is that not his blood?
I'm going to shoot on a couple of people right now. Okay.
Wow. If that's not his blood, man, that was poorly reported.
Horribly reported, and has been forever. And there's one guy who right now is making the rounds claiming that, it popped into my head. I love you, Blue Meanie, but you're full of shit. Nothing popped into your head. You and I did a podcast called Mind of the Meanie where we covered what happened that night with Owen Hart. And I was the one who smartened you up to the fact that that was not his blood. So now Meanie on his other show, on ad-free shows, has gone on and was like, I was watching it and it popped in my head that I remembered this. And it's like, Meanie, like, you don't have to give me credit by name, but at least be like, someone pointed out to me once. Like, don't
he's
try.
He's the smartest guy in the room. Come on.
Don't try and take credit for this. And what an awkward thing too, like to take, but no, I'm sure other people had pointed it out, but I pointed it out to him. Everyone had always talked about it. And I remember it was after watching the Dark Side of the Ring that they said, his blood's still there on the mat. And I have some weird, bizarre memory that I'm like able to, remember things that I shouldn't, right? like there's no reason to. But I started thinking to myself, I'm like, wasn't there like a bloodbath thing going on? Like something had happened before. I'm like, because I'm pretty sure that blood was on there the whole time. So I went back and I looked, and it happened to be Meanie's match, which is why I smartened Meanie up about it on the podcast. The Hardy Boys and Michael Hayes were hit with a bloodbath by the Brood on Sunday Night Heat before the Over the Edge pay-per-view.
So that shit was there literally from Jump Street.
You can very clearly see Matt Hardy gets up, puts his left arm on the ring, moves it, and there is the blood right there, the fake blood that is then there for the rest of the night. Mick Foley in his book talked about how in the match he looked over and saw Owen's blood on the ring. Nobody knew. And the fact that decades, that 25 years have gone by and nobody has pointed out to these poor people who have like PTSD of thinking that they had to wrestle, bad enough that you had to wrestle where your friend and colleague just died. That's bad enough on its own. But then to believe that you're wrestling on the man's blood when it was frickin' corn syrup, like let these people at least know that they didn't have to go through that.
Why? I know this is not, I'm not trying to be egotistical by any stretch about this show in particular, or you as a wrestling media journalist, but like, is anybody else saying this, or is this just literally you?
It was literally me. I've never seen anyone else say it. And I'm sure someone else has said it. They have to have. But I mean, it's, and maybe now that Meanie has taken credit and is out there, telling the world, maybe people will pay attention to it now. But the reality is, and look, at the end of the day, I'm shooting on Meanie. Like I said, I love Meanie. I have no issue with him. But it wasn't a memory he had. And that's an important piece, more important than the fact that I was the one who told him. What's important was that it wasn't a memory he had, because no one had that memory. And for 20 something years, Blue Meanie believed that Owen's blood was in the ring. Everyone believed that Owen's blood was in the ring. And I think that when you're seeing pictures of a crime scene literally shown on Dark Side of the Ring, crime scene photos, and they are showing a ring with blood, like, I understand whether he was bleeding or wasn't bleeding has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on how the accident happened, how he died, who's responsible. Literally no bearing on it whatsoever. Changes absolutely nothing. Except when Martha and her children went to Kemper Arena in Kansas City, and as they talked about in Dark Side of the Ring, and stood at the top of the catwalk and looked down because they needed that closure. They needed to see that. And that those children have a memory of thinking that they were seeing their father's blood in the ring. That is a different image than looking down at a ring. Again, doesn't change the loss, doesn't change anything, but looking at it from just the image in his wife's mind, in his children's mind, in his colleagues' mind for decades, that they believed that they were looking at his, it's, again, it is just so, doesn't matter, because it's not like, oh, it wasn't his blood. Right. Oh, good. So then he didn't die. Like, no, obviously this horrific thing happened and none of this changes it. But I just feel like there's something from a psychological, from like a PTSD, like I said before, the trauma of it that you have to live through. There is a difference between this is where your father died and this is where your father died and there's his blood smeared on the thing. And I just, it kills fair. Me that they had to believe for all this time that that's what they had seen, that his death was so much more gruesome, because the fact that there wasn't blood, you know, he died of internal bleeding. That was the cause of death, blunt force trauma. And maybe I'm not saying exactly right, but it was blunt force trauma and internal bleeding. I want to believe, and maybe this is just me wanting this, I want to believe, boom, he was hit, he was unconscious, he was done. That the worst of it for Owen was that you know, couple of seconds of fear falling, which is a horrific way to go as it is. But I want to believe in my heart that as awful as this was for all of us and for his family, that for the man himself, that it was just like that. I want to believe that. And it was something about the whole visual of it. Like, I want to believe that this was not as bad for him in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. Than that looked. Anyway, yeah. So it wasn't his blood. It was frickin' corn syrup from a bloodbath, and once again has been reported inaccurately. I don't understand how that's never been addressed.
Yeah, well, be that as it may, we are obviously talking about the Vince McMahon documentary, and this is what triggered it, because this is also, you know, a lot of Bret Hart was used on this, and you know, it's the Vince documentary. Like I said in the beginning, when I first saw the trailer came out, and I said, "Is this a fluff piece? Is this going to be okay? Like, is this going to be?" And then, like, you see, like, the the journalists out there saying, "Oh, you know, and these things are." I was floored. This was this. I was like, "Shit," you know, like, this is going to be the demise of this man. And you know what? It really does suck, and it brings me to a lot of people in wrestling. I'm a big tweeter and deleter sometimes, because sometimes my thumbs act a little faster than my brain. And I put out something the other night, and I was like, man, when my career is over in pro wrestling, the tell-all book that I'm going to write is going to make sports journalists and wrestling media junkies, their minds will explode with the amount of information that I've obtained in 12 years. And I know 12 years is a very small sample size, but again, for the people that I know that there's bad dirt on, you almost want to be like, well, they did so much other than this bad. So can we maybe focus on that? And I know that the world is, they salivate for bad information and negative information. People like, it's weird. It's a weird thing, but people actually enjoy bad news like more than they enjoy good news. Sure. And I think that that's why the Vince McMahon documentary is so telling and is so highly viewed. Like obviously nobody knows the view count because it's Netflix and that's part of the strike that SAG was on, right? Like we want to know how many people are watching. So I'm sure they'll get a number at some point. But yeah, like watching this back, it was rough because again, there was many times where I said out loud, this guy is an animal, right? Like an absolute animal. But then there was also times that I said, this guy is a savage. And in the savage context, I'm like, no, he's a fucking great business guy. Yeah. And he don't take shit from anyone. And he like, you did this, I'll do this, I'll do it better. Eat shit. You know what I mean? Like, and that's part of it. That's the part of Vince I actually can appreciate as an entrepreneur, as somebody trying to make it in so many realms of life, that like that cutthroat, just I'll eat your heart out before I let this fail mentality is amazing. It's just like, you don't have to do all the steps to get to that point.
It's funny though. It's funny because like there's that famous promo that Vince did with the shades of gray, right? Good guys versus bad guys, and it's passe and whatever the hell, right? And it's there's a shade of gray. That was the whole thing. And I thought about was like, this is the real world, right? Like I've always said this about no matter what side you fall on politically, and this is not across the board for every politician, but in general, people are always like, oh my God, I can't believe this person. He was so conservative and then he was caught in a hotel room with, right? Like whatever it is. I believe that there has to be a level of ego. There has to be a level of that cutthroat. Like you can't be successful in this world without having that to an extent. And I think the people at the very top, people look at guys like, like Jeff Bezos and stuff, right? And people will like say things about him and it's like, dude, you don't get to that point without being not quite normal in your head. And Vincent in the final episode mentions how he's got these like 3 computers in his head, and they're all, and he gets distracted by them, and they're all talking. It almost sounded like he was talking about like schizophrenia, to be honest. Like he's talking about how like
I'll roll it out.
They'll all be saying different things to him, and he's like, and it's been, sometimes I've wished I could just be normal, and it's been challenging at times to focus on things, and like he said, because he's got these like, and they're like, what's one of like, what's the other one thinking right now? And he's like, oh, it's thinking about something with sex. And like, it was like really, and you're looking at it going like, this dude is operating in a different world, a different mind space,
completely
than
different
anyone
stratosphere.
To the point that he literally created his own universe, right? Like that is what he did. You can look at it from, I'm not a psychiatrist, but you can look at it and say, there's a guy who was abused, this guy who never found acceptance, never, all this stuff. And then he just he didn't like the world, right? Wasn't a fan of it. Didn't like the way people were. So he made his own. So he made his own world. Then he made his own universe. Then he made his own, right? And and again, none of this is to say anything's right. Although I still had a really, really tough time with, look, what he is being accused of is horrific, right? I mean, it's disgusting. What we've seen from the text messages that they showed in the show. Now, I haven't read I read a decent amount of that like 64-page document and was just like, dude, I can't. I like, all right, I'm gonna skip over some of this.
You got morals. You have a family. You have a
yeah.
daughter,
I'm like, I'm gonna skip over some of this. I don't need to read. Like, this is tough.
This is kind of how I felt when like the Sandusky shit popped out. I was like, dude, how am I supposed to read any more of this shit? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it's
Like,
just like,
where's
okay,
the
I get it. But I think, from like they revisited some of these text messages in the show, and you look at it and you can't deny that, right? You can't deny that these texts were sent. Vince claims things were consensual, right? I look at it and go, it's one of my biggest pet peeves of us as a society is that the the dude's still innocent until proven guilty. And just because do I think he was guilty? Yeah, I kind of think he was. Like, that's my opinion on it. But I also want to step back and go, just because my opinion on reading these things is that he was guilty, I still think that at best, he's 95% guilty. There's always going to be something in there where you go, like, okay, maybe this wasn't quite accurate, or maybe he legitimately thought this or that or whatever. At the end of the day, what he did was just disgusting, no matter how you slice it. But the question is, is it, you know, I don't like the fact that he hasn't been found guilty of anything yet. Yet we're just, there it is. It's out there. Like, oh, here's the story of all the terrible things he did.
And that goes
You know,
that goes across the board with sports, with wrestling, with life. It's like, for instance, sports fans out there probably know who Ray Lewis is, right? Like Ray Lewis is a
yes.
all-pro Hall of Fame linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, won Super Bowls, right? I look at Ray Lewis, and every time you see Ray Lewis, people always like mutter like murderer, but it's like, wait, like my guy is like an influential speaker nowadays. Like he's going out and motivating, and like I still to this day will go on a big day, whether it be one of our events or maybe before a lift or something like that. I'll still watch a Ray Lewis hype video because I know how that's who he is. But like murderer because he was accused of that. Never found guilty, but accused. So you just think that.
Right.
Same thing, like obviously, now there's obviously people that were found guilty. So I will always have like this spot for like Mike Vick, right? Okay, my man, like you were in a dog thing, like,
no,
but
horrible
buddy,
person. Terrible
you are
human being.
just a piece of shit.
Yep.
And the fact that Fox Sports puts him on the air
No, I
is
hate
like,
it.
wow. Like,
I did not watch the Eagles when he was, after I found out about that and he was on the team. I wouldn't watch the games. I wouldn't. I couldn't do it.
What I'm
Yeah.
My
Horrible
point was
person.
he was found guilty. He did jail time, all that shit. So now you can label him when you see him in the streets like, oh shit, what an arm Mike Vick had, and oh, he was impossible to beat in Madden 2004. But also, you're a piece of shit, right?
And that
So
goes. Yeah, I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna
No,
say, so
continue.
For Vince, it was like, okay, these are all the things, that we saw in the documentary. These are all stories from either Close Encounters or people that were there, right? But you still don't have the United States court system to say, yes, he did all these things. He is a fucking piece of shit. So you can forever label him this way. It never happened. I don't think it will ever happen. So the fact that this label is being cast upon Vince McMahon, like, look, man, is he a horny, old, rage-filled testosterone dude? Probably. And did he send text messages that are just unbelievably like graphic and ridiculous? Probably. But if there was an exchange and it's like consensual and like somebody like, look, man, Trevor Bauer's a perfect example right now. He is pitching in the Mexican League. He used to be a dominant pitcher in Major League Baseball, right? His girlfriend comes out and says, he beat the shit out of me. He's such a woman beater, blah, 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 blah. Trevor then presents the text thread saying, hey, she literally asked for this. She was into this. This is what she wanted. And then people are like, oh. But yet he's still blackballed out of baseball. So it's like
they can't touch. They can't touch him. They can't.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's like,
and that's the thing with Vince. Was it consensual? Right.
Right.
We don't know that.
If Janelle or any of these people that are talking on these things, if any of these people are coming out and saying, he forced this on me, listen, I'm a 39-year-old married man now, so like those days are behind me. But I've met some girls.
Your days
I've
of
met
forcing yourself upon people is behind
right.
you.
Those are
Nice.
behind me. No. No, but what I will say is like there are girls, women and men who are into some wild, wild shit. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you right now, it's a possibility. So please don't rule that out.
That's the
That's all
that's
I'm
the
saying.
point, right?
Right.
Is that we need to get to the point where right now it's a he said she said,
Right.
and because Vince is not quite right in the head and everyone knows that, and he'll be the first one to tell you that, as he did in this documentary, everyone kind of looks and goes like, okay, yeah, I can see it, but that's not fair. Now, I'm not
Right.
saying he is innocent. I'm saying he's more than likely guilty, completely guilty of this, but we don't know. And it infuriates me I am very big on if I don't know, I am not going to push my belief on you.
Mm-hmm.
That's across the board. I will not push my beliefs on you. Show me fact, right? And whether I like it or not, then let me reconcile that. Don't,
Just show me a verdict. Show me a verdict. That's
exactly.
all. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's even if look, there's probably been people that have been wrongfully accused and are found guilty,
Of
right? And you're like,
course.
shit, what am I
Of
supposed to do?
course.
But
Tons.
that's what you have to base
But
your
that's what
information on.
that's when he then has the ability to appeal, right?
Right.
Like that's what I'm saying is it's set up a certain way that we should not be as media or podcasters or fans or just people in general should not be able to sit there and just say you're guilty. Oh, I read a thing that someone said you did these things. You're guilty. Like, no, it's not supposed to work that way. And that's all I'm saying. So I found the documentary, though, I thought it was interesting. I thought it shined a interesting light on Shane. I think it was really, I love some of Paul Heyman's stuff. Just kind of,
I like how it's uncensored.
Yeah.
You know, there's guys dropping it, like even Triple H dropping F-bombs and shit. I'm like, well, that's a
Yeah.
relief. You know, I'm doing the one of us, you know, like he's one of us.
Yeah. I liked the fact that, I liked how honest everybody was about things. And, Vince McMahon is not he went into, Shane told the story about like where he was wrestling around with his dad when he was younger, and his dad just grabs him by like the ribs, and then he like grabs him by the hair, and he like, I guess he pins him or whatever, and Shane's like, you cheated. And Vince is like, that's what I do. I cheat and then I win. And it's like, so that's when you have to start having the conversation of like, morally, no, he's not a good man. And we know this. But he's a guy who at one point in his life said, I am looking out for number one. And that's it. I'm looking out for myself. And that is it. And so there's a level of respect for, it's like honor among thieves, right? There's a level of respect where you can go, you're not a good person, but at least I respect the fact that you're telling me you're not a good person. Like, you're going to sucker punch me because you're a piece of shit, but at least you're just like, hey, heads up, I'm going to sucker punch you if given an opportunity. Like, now it's on me to decide how I want to interact around you. You have people who work for this man who have known for decades and decades and decades exactly how he was, who he was, and then would turn around shocked. I can't believe Vince McMahon would act this way. Dude, like, that's where I kind of have this issue. Like, for instance, we hear all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes at AEW, right? Not saying it's like this. I'm not saying Tony Khan is anything like this, but we hear about.
You better not.
Can we talk? We're gonna talk. Give me 1 minute to wrap this up, and then we're headed right to the Tony Khan Muppet voice. So I mean, if you look at that and you go, oh yeah, we hear all the rumors, it's really unorganized, it's really like a shit show over here or whatever, and then you get a job offer and you go to work there, and then you sit there and go, oh God, it's so unorganized, such a shit show. It's like, well, yeah, you knew this. So go to work and that's it. And just accept. And if, and, or don't accept the job, right? If you know, and that's kind of the thing is like, I've always felt that way with Vince prior to this, just the disgusting stuff. But Vince, the businessman, it's like every 10 years there's another person who's released and like, I was treated this way and disrespected in this way, and Vince yelled at me and screamed at me, and you're like, yeah, that's what you're signing up for. I don't have I have left jobs before based on the way that I've been spoken to, where I've just said, fuck you, I'm out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but if I had an opportunity to go back and work for that person again and chose to, or told that story to you, and then you had an opportunity to go work for that person, and then you show up and you get spoken to in a way that you aren't willing to accept, well, my feeling at that point is I'd go, well, Dave, just fucking accept it. What did you think was going to happen? I told you this is what it was. And that's where a lot of times people show up and they get released by WWE and they're like, they did this, they did that. It's like, yeah, you chose to go, and I get it. There's nowhere else to work.
And you know what? And you know what? They would kill to go back.
They go back. How many of them have?
Right.
They showed that in the thing with Sable. Sued the company for sexual harassment, and then comes back into a storyline where she's making out with Vince every week. Like, I feel like we're off the rails a little bit, which is where it's time now to talk about. I guess that's what this show is, right? We're off the rails.
We're off the rails here, and we're going even further off the rails with some AEW.
I just want to thank everybody for being here.
Dude, he is
the best wrestling in the entire world. I hope I'm not saying. I hope I'm not saying anything that's gonna, bury anybody or get anybody, in trouble.
No, fuck that. Like, I know he is so over the top, and I even said that to you. I was like, when Vince was on commentary, it was a different Vince, right? He dialed it up, right?
Dude. No. Yeah.
Dude, now, and that's fine because that's your commentary voice. You can dial that up to 1,000, right?
Yeah.
But man, oh man, like Tony, I'm talking directly to you, pal. They're in the building already. They bought tickets. They're there to see your product. You don't have to go out there and beg them to like what they're about to see, because 9 times out of 10, the wrestling there is good, right? Like, it's a good wrestling product. We watched all the matches at Grand Slam being whatever, and then the taping, some of the taping match. Everything was good. Like, I didn't sit there and be like, well, that sucked. I'm like, no, everything was good.
I sat there and said, oh, there's absolutely no psychology to that.
Well, that's another ball game, and solid media seats, by the way. You guys really know how to.
Yeah, can we out them for a second? I'm
telling you right now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm this AEW savant. I know who's who, right? But recognizable music only surfaces with me with WWE. I know, like, when music plays, I'm like, oh, that's him, or I know that music. I don't know a damn thing about music in AEW, so the problem is, and that's no shot at Mikey Ruckus. I love Ruckus and everything he does.
Yeah, he does some amazing things.
The problem is, I don't know how to identify the music to the person, right yet, at least. And when we have seats like that are off to the side and we can't see the Tron or any screen whatsoever, and music plays and the crowd reacts, we got to wait 10 seconds for them to come into the line of sight. And they're like, oh, it's him.
Like, we didn't even see MVP.
No,
and Stephanie Chase contacted them and complained and got moved. And we were like, we don't need to be moved. We're not doing that. We were too tired to move. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it's just like, set your media up somewhere else when you're a company that really needs the good press. I appreciated them having us there.
Sure,
and allowing us to to film our social media stuff there and everything. It was really cool. I do appreciate it, but I'm not going to kiss their ass and say, "Oh, thanks for the great seating where you set us up." Like, no, that was awful. It was absolutely terrible.
I felt like Ready to Rumble when they're like behind the pillar and he's
Yeah,
like, these seats bite.
yeah,
It's like
it's
they
terrible.
did.
Arthur Ashe Stadium, man, it's
I
I
love the
was
venue.
it
I
was
think it's great.
great. Year one, they were hanging from the rafters. This time, look, they're down, but the crowd that was there was hot. The crowd, I don't know
It
how it
was.
translated to TV, but the crowd was hot the entire time. And it's why when I look at things, I go, oh, there's no psychology in these false finishes and all the stuff that they're doing and how quickly they're back up. And then I look at it and I go, well, okay, this audience loved it. They ate up every last bit of it. The problem is your large audience doesn't. And a really interesting thing happened recently. I was showing my son some old school matches. He wanted to see like wrestling from when I was a kid. And I'm talking like I was showing him, like pre 98, because I'm not, I'm not showing him anything after that. But I was showing him some stuff and I could tell he was getting like bored, that like it was so slow and so plotting. And it really, I like looked at it and I said, like, we're in a time now where fans, like the younger audience and stuff, yeah, I'm 41. Like there's people who are considered like young adults who are like half my age, and they're the ones watching this product and they grew up with technology that we didn't grow up with. They grew up with a speed to their technology and a speed to their entertainment that we didn't grow up with. And I think that there's a place now for that. There's a place for the boom 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 type, of action. But at the same time, there's always a place for psychology, and these people are going to kill themselves. They're going to hurt themselves and end their careers early so that they can get that little pop where they could have gotten a pop twice as big had they taken their time and told a better story. So, yeah.
One of the things that like really started to trigger a lot of this, like, first of all, false finishes are very exciting. When they're done right, they are very exciting. You're like, oh my God, like they're going to keep going. Like, this is great. The no selling of certain things makes me a little nuts, right? But like, think about like you and I are trained, former, maybe one day again, current professional wrestlers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler. No. No, but what I'm saying is this. When I was trained to be a wrestler, by, Fat Buck and everybody like that, like I was trained by guys who knew what the hell they were doing. And they would teach, there was actual classes on how to take a buckle. Like if you get thrown to the buckle, how's it supposed to sound? How's it supposed to look? Make sure you stomp at the right time so it sounds like bang impact. Because if you just hit the buckle, it's not going to make an impact. You're not going to hear anything. Right, unless you're Bret Hart.
Yeah.
But what I will say, and yeah, nobody took a hard buckle forward like Bret Hart. I will say
God.
that. But the only problem I have is a hard buckle is supposed to hurt. And it was Bryan Danielson who I think started the whole let's get momentum by taking a hard buckle. I'm like, well, wait, that's supposed to hurt. Like, and then it just spirals down out of control from there. So it's like, okay, all these things are supposed to hurt, but when they happen, there's a time and a place where it hurts, and then this isn't the time and a place where it hurts. It's like,
so
what are we doing?
I was originally trained by Alpha the Wild Samoan, and with Samu had a hand in there. But I then went on, trained in ring with Nick Dinsmore, Eugene. I then trained with Rip Rogers down in OVW, and I never trained in ring with Al Snow, but I learned everything sitting next to. I used to go set up the ring at the OVW house shows, and then sit the entire night next to Al, where he would critique everything that was going on in the ring, and like turn to me at times and ask. I remember there was one time, I don't know if Drew McIntyre was hurt or what it was, but Drew was sitting with us and he would just go back and forth and just be like, why would he do that? Or why shouldn't he have done that? Or should he? Sometimes he'd go, why would he do that in a way that would make you think Al was going, that was a bad thing, but he was testing you because it was a good thing that he did. But he wanted to hear, like, he didn't want to hear, yeah, why would they? He wanted to hear, like, I kind of think that did make sense. And then go, you're right, it did. So he would do all these things. I don't know that Drew enjoyed it as much as I did, but maybe because Drew was then the one getting critiqued afterwards once he was in the ring, but
Right.
it worked out for him. But that's where I learned all like the psychology of it. And again, whatever you've been taught, a lot of the time is what you're going to believe, and Al Snow is not a big fan of a lot of the stuff that's out there today. So it's tough for me sometimes when I look at that. I hear his voice in my head. But I think wrestling hurts so much more than people realize. And there are things like we talked about before when we were at your show and we were running the ropes earlier in the day. People don't understand how much that hurts until you build up like a callus to it.
Like a tolerance, yeah.
Yeah. There are so many aspects of wrestling where the move that you are selling like it hurt like hell didn't really hurt, but the move that no one thinks about, like honestly, think of it this way. The bump and feed, right? Get punched, bump, right back up, punched again, bump, right back up, clothesline, bump, right back up, right? The punches and the clotheslines didn't hurt at all. It was the bump that hurt every time you did it. Yet you're acting like it was the punches and the clotheslines that hurt, and you're acting like the bumping on the mat didn't hurt at all because you're getting right back up and doing it again.
But if you get body slammed, it's supposed to hurt. Exactly.
So it's weird. Let's put it that way. It's very weird. But Tony Khan's voice.
Back to the topic at hand.
That's not his voice, and it's a weird.
Have to do it is what I'm saying.
He doesn't have to do it.
And you know what?
It's what hurts.
When he goes to the back, I know who's back there, or I know a lot of guys back there that are probably like, dude, that was man, yeah, dude, you got him, bro.
Everybody's patting. Everyone's patting him on the back. Everyone's patting him on the back. And and that's it. Because why not? Who's going to be the person? Who is going to be back there? And this goes to, again, back to everything we were saying before. Let's say you and I are hired by AEW to work backstage to be like the, whatever. Are you going to be the one who goes up? Right, but are you going to, if only you knew anyone back there. Are you going to be the one when Tony walks back who goes, hey, boss, not good. That wasn't good. Don't do that.
You know who needs to do that? Like Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, guys that have been around. Like, I'm not even talking about the executives that you see break up fights or, those guys, like, those are all the younger-ish people that will not step to this guy. You need somebody.
The person with the ironclad contract is the one who has to do it, right?
Right. Or something, or just somebody.
Like, where's Jericho? Where's Jericho going, like, Tony?
Right. Yeah, no, dude, like, can we stop? Tony. But then Jericho will be the last one to say it, because every idea that Jericho's pitched to Tony's like, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. Go, wait, you're talking about a tree and it's a learning tree? Oh my God. And all of a sudden you're doing a fucking learning tree for 8 weeks of television and you want to blow your head off. Well, like, because I do every time I see, hi guys. And I'm just like, Jericho, man, please go back. Please go back. Like, we need you. Save us, Y2J. Okay. Like, please. But it's over the top. There's not a single soul that's back there that's going to tell him different. So until that happens, and I know Tony Khan Googles his own name every night. He's obsessed like that, like Ryback is. Like they're obsessed with making sure that they're either A, talked about, or B, if there's anybody talking shit, they jump on their throats and they're like, "Oh no, I didn't do that." You know what I mean? Like,
well, and hopefully the transcript of this podcast has a solid SEO and he's able to find it.
Just put it in the title.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the title of the show.
Of the episode, What's Up with Tony Khan's Voice?
Yeah.
I think that's it.
And then I'll get a text. Say, bro, you're on the cusp.
You really want to do that?
You're on the cusp. You're right there. Bro, they're going to call you to be an announcer. You really want to, you should probably take that down. And it's like, okay. Like, I will. Like, dude, it's just again, man, I do, and this is not to get it twisted at all. We make fun, I make jokes, but it's like I do root for everybody's success. and happiness and all that shit. I'm not an
Yeah.
evil malice person. I hope everybody's check
I want
clears and
AEW to be
everybody.
huge.
Of course, I want AEW to be what WCW was, right?
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate competition rival. Now, what is the next move to make that a rival? Like, is it a possible addition of a Shane McMahon in the office? I don't know, right? I don't know. But what I will say is they need to start really sitting down and talking about what works and what doesn't, and stop with this, like, look at the mold that TNA has done, right? And I understand TNA is small peanuts compared to both juggernauts, but TNA has done enough to now have a working relationship with WWE, and their stars have never been brighter, right?
And
So, like, why can't AEW just kind of sack up a little bit and say, look, we need to be more open. And I'm not talking about this forbidden door bullshit where
it's
Ibushi
not a
Shaka Haka
it's
goes
not
and
a
fights some
forbidden
other guy.
door. It's
It's
not a
not. It's
forbidden
not.
door.
Not anymore, at least.
No. And the forbidden door, like the promo I cut a few months back, the forbidden door are for people like myself who can't even get our foot in that door, can't even crack it open just a little bit.
Yes, it is indeed forbidden.
I'll kick down the forbidden door and show up. I'll bring Devastation Inc. with me. We'll show up.
I have to, small pivot, but like, again, we talked about this last week with what makes a good manager, right? And I understand that those guys, Moff, Donovan, Trax, and Benjamin, they're all buddies within the wrestling world, and they took it upon themselves to create what they created. But that little extra piece of garbage manager that's now in the middle of all this, it solidifies just how good and how big these guys can be. Individually, performance-wise, they're all money. They are. Promo-wise, I think if I had to look, I would say Donovan's probably the best talker out of all of them. Moff yells a lot, so it's like, but Moff cuts a mean promo too.
He can get quiet. And
Trax and Benjamin, they're like the silent assassins of this whole thing. And I'm a mark for Benjamin's Pittsburgh accent. I don't know why. It sounds like he's from the Midwest. It's like, well, he's like has this little twang to it. But like, I just look at that group, that foursome plus you, and I'm like, this should be featured on, at the very, very minimum, NWA television, Power, shit like that. You know what I mean?
And I'm going to pull back the curtain and tell you why it won't be. Okay?
They're afraid.
No, here's why it won't be. And this is, maybe I shouldn't even say any of this. I don't know. We'll see. The people who hire people like you and me, people for our jobs, managers, on-air, interviewers, commentators, the people who hire for those companies, for an MLW, for an NWA, those people are the people who currently have those jobs as the managers, as the commentators, as the on-air personalities. So that commentator, that whatever it is, they have to have that personality where they're able to say, I am confident enough in myself that I'm not worried about my job security. Bring them on in. We're going to work together, and that's just going to up my game. The problem is you have people who can look and say, wow, that's a hell of a wrestler. Oh, man, I should really tell Tony Khan about him. Except then maybe I won't get as much TV time because maybe I'm not as good. Oh, man, this guy, Dave Sturcio is one hell of a commentator. But if I bring him in, he actually could also backstage kind of do my job too. That's tricky. Maybe I don't want to bring him in because, maybe he's too good, And look, sometimes there are things like NWA, MLW, like I mentioned before, where they have a bunch of managers, they have a bunch of commentators, and there's no reason sometimes to look out on the indies and find somebody else if you're not looking to fill the spot. But I've always looked at it and said, when somebody is when someone is as damn good as I am, right? I'll just put this on me and you as well. When someone is as good at what they do as I am, as you are, We mentioned guys, Devastation Inc., other talent that wrestles for Fight Factory Wrestling and stuff, and all over the indies. When you're as good as that group, you make space. That's my feeling on it. I mean, that's the issue to me that I see is the people who are hiring are too afraid of losing their job.
Yeah,
I don't want to hire you to be 3 rungs below me if I look at you and go, this guy's going to work his way up and replace me before I'm ready to retire.
I remember specifically, and I don't care about calling anybody out by name. Like I remember specifically, it's like, how the hell do I get into TNA or Impact at the time? Like, how do I do that? And I remember Buck or Kevin, one of them told me like, oh, just contact Josh Matthews. And I was like, well, he's the guy. So like,
yep.
Why would I contact Josh Matthews about being a commentator on his show?
And that's my point. Right. And that's what I'm saying. And it sounds like, to quote CM Punk, sounds like sour grapes, but it's not. It isn't. I mean, this is business. This is it. Like, if I had the job as an on-air personality and the job to hire people, I'm probably not spending too much time trying to find a replacement for myself. Right? Like, I get it.
Unless you personally, like for instance, me and Fight Factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love doing commentary with you, right? That's my favorite thing to do in wrestling. However, first 2 shows that I've done commentary, do I think I knocked it out of the park? I think I left a little bit meat on the bone, right? I don't think I was at my best. However, I also see Chris Payne running around on a headset. I see Tommy working on the music. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I need to be more involved. Like, there's no way. Like, I am not Vince McMahon. I can't run the show and then run the show. So like, I'm like, all right, who can I hire as a play-by-play guy if I decided to step aside? And that's not an ego thing. That's just me wanting to be in a different role. That's just, and me owning the business. I can put myself in a different role, but like, I wouldn't hesitate to hit up, an AJ McKay or Johnny Cuesto, Johnny
LaQuesta, yeah.
LaQuesta. Fantastic. He's great
awesome,
at what he does. I would not hesitate to call guys like that. But that's just me thinking as a businessman, stepping aside. But if I'm I remember trying to get in with WWE, they're like, you got to talk to Michael Cole. I'm like, Michael Cole's not going anywhere. No. You know what I mean? He's shifted shows more times than anybody I can imagine, but he's never going
and
anywhere.
Now he's stepped down from that. He's not even that role anymore.
Right, because he's like, I'm
never hiring people.
Why would I want to hire my replacement? That's stupid.
And look, we can go, we're pretty much out of time here, folks.
Sponsors are yelling at us.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, look, we can this is something that we can dive into more, in the future, but it's really tough, and I hope that if anyone's listening to this, that they're understanding where we're coming from with this, that we're not like, listen, dude, we're fine. We don't need these jobs. What we're saying is we're using I mean, I'll take it, but what we're saying is you're not going to see change, whether it's, at any point, you're not going to see change because the people who have to initiate the change are the people who are the reason why you need change, if that makes sense.
So the people that are making the change are the people that are the most comfy in their chairs that they've ever been. And they're not getting up anytime soon. Yep. So,
and and that's the thing. Look, you and I both have enough experience. I've been in this business for 25 years. I've run live events. From the smallest of the small to pretty decent things with major stars. I've contributed to things like Ric Flair's last match with graphics, with the sitting in the room there with when they were coming up with the breakdown of the show. I could contribute so much more than a handful of people that are working for every single company, whichever letters you throw together. I know I could contribute more than at least one person in every single company. But it's not going to happen. You too. You as well.
I feel that way, yeah.
But it's not going to happen. But guess what? So could 15 other people, who could contribute more.
The word of the day is that these companies are all complacent. Yeah. That's it. Like they are very in love with what they got going on, If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
All you have
But
to
if
do
it
is
is
look
broke,
at that Ring of Honor taping, and you look and you
what-
go, "What are you even doing? Like, what is like? You have an opportunity here. You own this brand of Ring of Honor, and this
Yeah.
is what you're doing with it. Like,
yeah,
it's
we'll see.
yeah. That's a whole other. Maybe we'll talk about Ring of Honor another time. And,
Sure. We got plenty of information and plenty of episodes in the bank now, so you can go check out all the episodes of the Wrestling Hour. If you're enjoying this product, please like the video on YouTube, share the video out, tell a friend. It would help us out tremendously as we grow this show. A lot of stuff coming up in I don't want to say October, but definitely November. And there's just a lot of things down the pike that we are excited about. We haven't even talked about SummerSlam moving to 2 nights, so we'll talk about all that and coming to New Jersey, by the way. So that's cool. But yeah, we'll talk about that as the weeks roll on. So for Dave Sturcio and Josh Chernoff, this has been another episode of The Wrestling Hour, and we will see you guys right back here next week.